Welcome back, players. I know I've been MIA for a few months with work nonsense and various other domestication activities, but I did manage to make some time for patch 5.1 and decided to take up the lance for my triumphant return. I've enjoyed it enough to want to put together another starter kit for anyone who's interested at a first look into the basics and the rotation, seeing how it plays out, or those folks who just missed hearing my voice. As is tradition with my guides, we'll be covering the AoE rotation, single target rotation, some additional comments regarding ability positionals, utility, and situational jumping etiquette. If you're new to my specific flavor of starter kit presentation, I'll be listing the abilities being used typically as they're being executed on the right side of the frame, along with a brief tooltip to give a generalized flow of the action. With that said, let's jump right in. We'll start out by going over the AoE rotation for those maximum girth pulls. If your tank is a graduate of my dungeon pulling guide, they'll likely be pulling several packs together while being more than tactical with their tank cooldowns. If you can manage to get close enough during the gather up phase while the tank is moving towards the next pack, go ahead and get your disembowel damage buff up, but don't sweat it if you can't get contact while the pull is being put together. The very first thing you'll want to do on any pull, whether AoE or single target, is initiate Blood of the Dragon to get your gauge going and gain access to Gearskogel and your combo finishers. Your basic GCD AoE combo is going to be Doom Spike to Sonic Thrust into Curthin Torment. You'll want to weave in your Dragonfire Dive AoE jump ability as well as High Jump if you plan to build stacks with Mirage Dive for Gaze of the Dragon in between packs. It's pretty rare that you'll have time during trash pulls to get into your Life of the Dragon phase, but you can maintain your gauge between pulls if that's your goal by reinitiating Blood of the Dragon before the timer wears off. If you're just starting into the dungeon and you're confident your buff abilities like Lance Charge and Battle Litany will be up by the time you make it to the boss, you can fire those up as well for some extra damage. I also like to use Life Surge with Curthin Torment if I'm not coming up on a boss, as it will provide that guaranteed critical hit as well as some light healing. AoE for the Dragoon is pretty straightforward. Well, it's literally straightforward, as your AoE combo abilities all hit in a straight line in front of you, so keep that in mind as well, and remember that Curthin Torment also adds 10 seconds to your Blood of the Dragon gauge. One last tip is that if you do manage to get all the way into Life of the Dragon, don't forget that Stardiver is an AoE jump as well. Your single target rotation is a bit more involved, but has a very nice rhythm to it once you get comfortable with the back and forth and buff maintenance. Again, you'll start off by activating your Life of the Dragon to kick off your job gauge and access those important abilities. Your first goal when opening up on single target is to get your disembowel buff and chaos thrust dot up as well, and front loading your self buffs and party utility windows to drop your full thrust combo into. With those off GCDs spent in the front half, now is a good time to initiate your high jump to get dive ready and start building your Gaze of the Dragon stacks, working up to the life phase. From here you'll move into your 4th and 5th steps in your combo, which are Wheeling Thrust coupled to Fang and Claw, which also add to your Blood of the Dragon gauge timer. In this instance I snuck in a Gearskogel with a Dragonfire Dive, but keep in mind that that can clip your GCD, which I'll discuss further in the next section of the video. If you've connected correctly with the latter steps of your combo from a positional perspective, you will gain Raiden Thrust ready, and your True Thrust ability will be converted into Raiden Thrust for more potency as you slide into that high-powered full thrust combo consisting of Raiden Thrust, Vorpal Thrust, and Full Thrust. You'll always want to utilize your Life Surge buff on Full Thrust if it's up due to its huge potency. Also note that your Full Thrust combo will be followed by Fang and Claw into Wheeling Thrust as opposed to the Chaos Thrust combo enders of Wheeling Thrust into Fang and Claw. You will repeat this sequence while maintaining your disembowel buff. A good rule of thumb for this is that if your disembowel buff has less than 10 seconds remaining, you should start thinking about moving towards your Chaos Thrust combo to refresh it. Shortly thereafter, you'll be able to weave another high jump into the rotation and drop your second Mirage Dive to complete the Gaze of the Dragon stacks and have access to Life of the Dragon, which will swap your Gearskogel ability for a more potent version called Nastrand and give you access to another AoE jump ability called Stardiver. During the Life of the Dragon phase, you will weave a Stardiver in between your normal rotation and send out as many Nastrands as you can. Life of the Dragon will fall off in 30 seconds and return your gauge to Blood of the Dragon mode, where you can return your business as usual in the sequence. Positionals are important to the discerning Dragoon, not only because you'll receive potency bonuses for executing them correctly, but once you get comfortable in the rotation, you'll find that your positioning will be a very natural indicator of where you are in the progression of the sequence. An example of this would be how Chaos Thrust will also leave you in the proper position for Wheeling Thrust. The other key component for the Dragoon's functionality is proper jump placement, and understanding that jumping will put you in a movement limiting animation lock. Shadowbringers has made many strides towards making this less impactful by making high jump animate very quickly, but situational awareness will go a long way when using your jumps. One of the most important guidelines for jumping outside of making sure you're not doing so in a world-ending mechanic is that you will want to avoid double weaving another one of your off GCDs with any of your jumps, as the animation lock will ensure you clip your normal GCD refresh. While high jump will return you to your original starting position, your other jump abilities, Dragonfire Dive, Spine Shatter Dive, and even Star Diver, will take you to your target, and this makes them ideal for closing gaps if needed. But you shouldn't hold on to them for extended periods of time, as they do inflict decent enough damage to utilize whenever they are up, unless a near future mechanic demands you hold on to one of them for placement purposes. Of course, that is all up to the discretion of the Dragoon, as I'm sure you've seen I have a habit of jumping in on pull with Spine Shatter Dive, which is not always an optimal play. To wrap up, do not neglect the Dragoon's utility abilities, outside of the obvious party damage buffs found in Battle Litany and Dragon Sight. Utilize your leg sweep to stun out important NPC casts, and don't be shy with the use of Second Wind or Bloodbath to take a bit of the burden off the healers when you inevitably get greedy with a jump and then you take your punishment for it. True North is always great if you can't quite get to the positional you need to bring your Raiden's Thrust up for that extra bit of potency, and Arm's Length is always a good call for increased uptime. And finally, for utilities, don't forget about Elusive Jump. This ability is great for its escape benefits, and when utilized correctly, makes the Pro Dragoon look magnificent while avoiding mechanics. That's going to bring us to the end of the starter kit, players. I found the pacing and overall visceral feel of the Dragoon's combat rotation to be an absolutely great experience, and I recommend it to anyone interested in a high-impact melee DPS. I do plan to update my Ninja starter kit with the recent overhaul in patch 5.1 and get more intimate with the Monk and the Samurai now that I have them both at 80. So let me know in the comments which melee DPS you all find to be the most satisfying, or if you'd be interested in a more specific job-related melee DPS guides, or even a general melee DPS rundown. Thanks again for chilling with me on this guide, players, and I'll holler at you again soon.